So, good afternoon, everyone. We are tasked to report the chapter 11 entitled with grading and reporting of assessment results. So, when we say grading and assessment, they are two different words because assessment, the center of this are on the learner. So assessment will gather information about what the students knows and what he or she can do, while on the other hand is grading. It is part of evaluation and it involves the judgment made by the teacher. So in this chapter, we will shall look into the grading system in the Philippines, the weighted grading, and the final rating. So, and also the different reporting system shall also be discussed. And lastly, it's a short segment on progress monitoring is included to provide you with an idea of how to track students' progress through formative assessment. Alright, so our objective in this lesson is at the end of this chapter 11, students are expected to utilize assessment results to monitor students' learning progress and achievements. Alright, so let us proceed to defining what is grading. So, grading is a process of assigning a numerical value, letter, or symbol to represent students' knowledge and performance. So, these are called grades, etymologically a degree of measurement. So, according to Gasky 2004, grading serves 6 rules. So, the first one is to communicate achievement status of students to parents and other stakeholders. So, with the help of this, parents would know what should be done in order to help their children in their learning. Number 2 is to provide information to students for self-evaluation. So, through self-evaluation, it will increase self-awareness through reflective practices, making performance improvement practices intrinsic to ongoing learning. So, number 3, to select, identify, or sort students for specific programs. So, it is important to identify or sort students for specific programs so that teachers can be able to choose what learning needs to provide and learning resources that best suit to the students. So, number 4 is to provide incentives for students to learn. So, incentives will motivate students to increase their work and overall performance in school. So, number 5 is to evaluate effectiveness of instructional programs. So, ensuring the instructional programs is important to consider the extent to which is interesting, approachable, and engaging instructional to use. So, let us proceed to the last one is to provide evidence of students' lack of effort or inability to accept responsibility for inappropriate behavior. So, with this, it allows the school or department to understand how and when the circumstances affected the students. Alright, so now let us proceed with the analysis of assessment data. So, Musial, Nieminen, Thomas, and Borky 2009 wrote that grade has two critical elements. These are analysis of assessment data and interpretation and communication of grade. So, first, let us know what is analysis of assessment data. So, when we say assessment data, teachers would make sure that the grades of the students will reflect their learning and performances. So, in addition, assessment data may become distorted for a number of reasons. So, by providing incentives for perfect attendance, joining the extracurricular activities, and having a good conduct in class may inflate the learner's grades. So when we say inflate, the grades of a student will increase. But problem arises when their scores in national standards test do not compare with their classroom performances. So, dili siya magkatugma. So, there are some instances that the teachers would not recognize the students' effort in the class participation. So it turns out that their grades in standard test is high, but it turns out to be low. So to prevent these issues, the teacher should remember that the grading should be the students' scholastic performances. Why? Because the policy contained in Section 144 of the Manual of Regulation for Private Basic Education, DepEd Order Number 88 Series of 2010, states that the final grade or rating given to a pupil or student in a subject should be based solely on his scholastic performance. Any addition or diminution to the grade in a subject for co-curricular activities, attendance, or misconduct shall not be allowed except as may otherwise be explicitly provided by an individual school in an appropriate issuance or publication, and provided further that such adjustment is relevant to the subject content and requirements. In the elementary level, the misconduct of a pupil may affect his grade in character education. So there is also a similar provision is found in the Manual of Regulation for Private Higher Education, Section 110, CMO 40 Series of 2008. It states there that non-cognitive students' characteristics like punctuality and conduct are also important, but this should not be mixed with test scores and other indicators of academic achievement in a single grade. So this is from Kobis, Zane, and Burrich 2010 and Nitko and Brockhart 2011 as commonly practiced marks for conduct and traits in the basic education levels are recorded separately. Alright, now so we are done with the analysis of assessment data. So let us now proceed with the interpretation and communication of grades. So and the main purpose of grading is to communicate information to students and parents about the student's achievement or goal attainment. This is stated by Nitko and Brockhart 2011. So, parents have the right to know about the goal of their children. So, the teacher has the responsibility to explain the different grading system because that is the responsibility, because there are some instances that the teachers and parents understanding about grades will not coincide. So because there are some grades that in absolute terms or in relative terms, so the teachers will surely make the parents understand about how their children getting that grades, and that's it. So now let us proceed with the grading system of the Philippines. So according to Kubis, Zane, and Borich 2010, marking or grade system have two dimensions. The first one is the type of comparison. The second one is the types of symbol. So they defined mark as a cumulative grades that reflect academic achievement. So now let's find out what are the two types of comparison. So the first one is norm reference grading or relative standard grading, and the second one is criterion reference grading or absolute standard grading. So first, let us first talk about the norm reference grading. So this grading is focuses on performance of one peer. So meaning to say, the grading is with relative standard. So there is a predetermined grade distribution. Just like for example, the top 10% of the class may be given an A and the next 25% gets a B. So in this way, it could promote an healthy competition among students because only few are given the chance to have high grades. So, in by this, sometimes the classroom creates jealousy and misunderstanding that create with peace and peace, like suya ay na lang, magsuya ay magpalabuanay. So another issue is that high grades are given to the top students even though they may not achieve the required level of proficiency. So why nganong mahitabo man siya inani, because sometimes naman jud ka nang naila na siya nga top students na din, even though dili niya i-give iyang best, still makakuha gyapon siya high grade. So uh, teachers are advocating this approach are grading on the curve. So there would also be students with low grade. So na always na siyang mahitabo nga na students nga makakuha siya low grades na maka-affect sa iyang self-esteem. So this grading system is not really used by many educators. So let us proceed to the next one, which is the criterion reference grading or absolute standard grading. So this grading is commonly used by many educators because this grading would always reflect the students' achievement of the learning targets as specified in the curriculum. So kani diri is dili ta makakita og mga biases kay the teachers always look the effort of the students. So criterion also has its pitfalls, so na siya mga negative. So the first one is the inexperienced teachers may have difficulty setting reasonable expectation of students. So maglisod ang teacher. So for the teachers to help the students, they assess the students, especially those students that are have a lower cognitive level. So meaning to say, ang students is low ang iyang kanang pagsabot sa mga butang. So matabangan siya sa teacher ana. So kay para the previous nga mga lesson nga gagmay siya mga score, makabawi siya sa next nga mga quizzes. Kay para ang ilang grades is mo increase. Muna siya sa criterion. So now let us proceed to the approaches to grading. So local and international schools offering basic and tertiary education use codes in reporting students' progress and achievement. So there are five different codes in giving the students progress. So the first one is numerical grades, just like 100, 99, 98, 97, 96, 95. So the system of using numerical grades is popular and well understood because they are preferred since they are conveniently summarize the overall performance of students. So numerical grades do not actually describe the strengths and weaknesses of the learners. So sometimes we tend to see that grades don't define me, but actually grades really matters. So this numerical grades is commonly used here in the Philippines, especially in DepEd. Alright, so let us proceed with the second types of approaches to grading, which is letter grade. So basically it is A, B, C. So letter grades are typical in American grade school and high school. So dili na siya common use in the Philippines. So, letter grades have the same advantage and disadvantage of numerical grades. So, letter grades is not that intimidating unlike the numerical grades. So, the third type is two category grades. So, it is pass, then fail, satisfactory, and unsatisfactory. So, this type of approaches to grading is less stressful in students because they don't need to feel pressure about low grade point averages. But there are some students may tend to aspire, meaning to say they want to accomplish a particular goal for a minimum level of competence to pass the subject or course. So, for instances, this system of grading provides students strong and weak points. Alright, so we are now in the fourth type of approaches in grading. So, checklist. So, checklist may be as simple or elaborate. So, in this type of approach to grading, the teacher simply places a check mark next to the observed performance statements. Checklists are common in the elementary level and can very well replace or supplement traditional grading and reporting system. So now let us proceed to the number 5, which is standard based. These are include advanced, proficient, beginning, and similar. So standard based grading requires teacher to base grades from definite learning standard and compels them to distinguish product, process, and progress criteria in assigning grades. So this is stated by Gasky, Swan, and Jong by 2011. So, in this approach to grading, it creates a more equitable learning environment as students are given clear learning targets and rubrics that they can use to reach mastery of classroom content. Alright, so here in the Philippines, the K-12 rating system is standard based because it measured how students are able to reach the standards in terms of content and performance. So now we are down to the grading issue. So we all know that in everything there is an issue. So it includes the grading. So Nitko and Brockhart 2011 mentioned 7 issues concerning the summative grading. So these issues must be addressed to make valid inferences and evaluation of students' performances. So the first one is consider what type of student performance you need. So it is your responsibility that you need to make your students improve about their learning, and when you conduct an assessment you need to inform them for them to study in advance, so in this way they could get a high grade. So that's it. So number 2 is consider how to make marking scale consistent throughout the marking period. So as a teacher, it is your responsibility to be consistent with your work. So the third one is decide on the grade components and their respective weights. So in the basic education level, there are weights for each assessment component. So in tertiary level, it is instructional. So nevertheless, teachers are chiefly responsible in providing quality classroom assessment. So those assessment needs to be reliable and fair. So the fourth one is consider the standards or boundaries of each letter grade. So once identified, this should be followed across all the subject to maintain the same standard, quality, and comparability. So it should be put in mind of all the teachers. So number 5 is decide on borderline cases. So the grade of a student who is a point away from the passing mark, or another student whose grade is at boundary between the grades, may be adjusted if there is additional achievement information that warrants such modification. So if the students have the chance to make their grades more higher, then do it, because it's your responsibility as a teacher. So the sixth one is be concerned with the issue of a failure. So whenever you feel that your students will fail, so always encourage them to do better, because as a teacher, they are also our son or daughter, so we need to make them feel that they are belong to the class. So help them if you can. So number 7, or the last one, is be concerned with the practice of assigning 0 for a mark. So the issue of assigning a 0 for missed assessment is whether or not it is fair practice that results to an accurate mark of student performance. So if that student didn't comply that specific task, then as a teacher, you can make a substitute activity so that that student will not get a 0 mark. So now I will give the floor to the next reporter, which is Mr. John Dave Opala. Dave, the floor is yours.
Hello, good day everyone. I am Johnny Vopalia and today I am going to discuss about reporting. So there is a lot forms of reporting, like reporting in national TV or in TV or in broadcast method like TV Patrol, 24 Oras. There's also reporting and teaching like what I do right now. I am discussing or explaining a certain topic. But today, a reporting that I am going to tackle is the reporting of learners' capabilities or learners' assessment in a specific evaluation performance that is in a form of report card. So what is report card? Report card is a common method of reporting a learner's abilities and progress. It is contained usually with learners' numerical or letter grades, plus it also contain relevant information about the students. It is periodically submitted by a school to the parents, and note that grade books and report card are usually vary in format. So basically, report card is a written assessment of a student's work, progress, and conduct, which afterwards sent home to parent or guardians. Or in basic or in simplest form, report card is the evaluation of students' performance. It is usually contains with numbers or grades of our grades and relevant information or comments of some teachers about the specific students. Also, I wanted to highlight the difference between grade books and report card. Grade book is usually used in Western countries like the USA. Inside the grade book is the breakdown of scores and grades of a specific student, like the score of his or her quizzes, seat works, minor and major exams, and his or her final grades. While in report card is usually used in a Southeast Asian countries like Philippines, but in report card we can only see the final grade of a specific subject of the specific students. That's the difference between grade books and report card. So in the Philippines, the report card is also known as the DepEd Form 138E, that is issued after 2 weeks of rating period or after major exam like periodical exam and returned duly after signed by parents or guardians. So usually, report card is issued or released during or after a parent or teacher conference. So what is parent-teacher conference? Parent-teacher conference can supplement written reports. The face-to-face encounter of teacher and parent is a efficient way to share information with parents, iron out any misunderstanding between home and school, and plan together a program that would help improve the status of the students according to Miller, Lin, and Grodland in 2009. So basically, in the Philippines, parent-teacher conference is known as the PTA meeting in our country, or the parent-teacher assembly, wherein most of teachers and parents come together and discuss a specific dilemma or a plan on how they can help their their sons, their daughters, or their students perform well or improve. According to research or many experiences by teachers, many of teachers have experienced that some parents or guardian cannot be able to attend a parent-teachers assembly or PTA meeting or parent-teacher conference for some reasons. That is why teachers consider writing a narrative report. So what is a narrative report? Narrative report is an open-minded, qualitative description of a learner's strong and weak areas of what he or she has accomplished during the period. The description may be general or a highly specific. A report card typically has in communic spaces a mark for teachers' comments. In the earlier version of DepEd Form 1380 for grades 1 to 2. So basically, a narrative report is a form of letter. A letter wherein the student's weakness and strength is recorded or written in a specific quarter or in a specific period of time. Afterwards, the teacher or the letter is sent to the parent, and afterwards signed and returned after. The narrative report's purpose is for parents who wasn't able to come during the PTA meeting or the parent-teacher conference, for them to be informed of their sons or daughters' progress in school. Portfolios provide evidences of a learner's progress and accomplishments. It showcases the best use for summative evaluation, highlights the student's final products or best works. So, in simplest words, portfolios is a systematic collection of student work that represents students' activities, accomplishments, and achievements over a specific period of time in one or more areas of the curriculum. According to Macmillan 2007, student-led conference is a growing trend. In this conference, it is the students who explain their grades and show off their work to their parents. The students write their reflections and prepare their portfolios day prior to the conference. So in other words, a student-led conference is a meeting with a student and his or her family and teachers, during which the student share his or her portfolios of work and discusses progress with family members. It is the student who facilitates the meeting from start to finish. Move on to principles of effective grading and reporting. According to Tomlinson and McTighe in 2006, they discussed the 6 key principles for fair and effective grading and reporting. By following these principles, students may become more motivated to learn, as grades actually describe their actual performances. Here are the 6 key principles of effective grading and reporting. The first one is grades and report should be based on clearly specified learning goals and performance standards. So, basically, it means that grades should reflect achievement of learning standards. They should have a qualitative descriptions of the quality of work that students have shown or produced. The second one is the evidence used for grading should be valid or authentic. Students should be assessed on what they are taught. Grades should not be influenced by non-academic criteria like attendance, social behaviors, attitudes, and amongst others. This model the final grade, reducing the validity of interpretation. The third one is the grading should be based on established criteria. It means that instead of using a non-reference system, grades should mirror how learners have attained the learning targets. Teachers should work towards ensuring the students in the class achieve mastery. The fourth one is not everything should be included in grades. As mentioned in the previous segments, assessment for formative purposes are all about feedback. They are documented as evidences of progress. Summative assessments are the accountability measures that determine what students can or cannot do after an instructional unit. The fifth one is the avoid grading based on averages. Deviations in performance that occur during the learning process should not be included. Suppose a student obtained a low score in the first test but was able to get a high mark in a second test on the same topic. It would be incorrect to average them out, but instead choose the second assessment as valid indicator of mastery. The last one or the sixth one is the focus on achievement and report other factors separately. So the purpose of reporting system is to communicate the students' achievement to families, post-secondary institutions, and employers. This system must, above all, communicate clear information about the skills of a student has mastered or the areas where they need more support or practice. So we have curriculum-based assessment, or also known as the progress monitoring. Considering the value of formative assessment, this segment has been included to provide information on how to go about progress monitoring. It is crucial that student progress is documented to aid in communication with parents. So what is progress monitoring? Progress monitoring is described as a formative process to assess students' performance and evaluate the effectiveness of instruction according to Vanes, Source, Smith, and Williams of 2012. It is vital in the individualized education and special education. This technique is oftentimes integrated in a response to intervention or the RTI model. RTI model is a method of academic intervention. Progress monitoring is important in a response intervention system because it provides teachers with the data that they need to make decisions about whether students should be moved between the different tiers. Teachers often worry that doing progress monitoring takes too much time away from their instruction, but at the end of the day, it is all worth it and it helps students to progress. Popular progress monitoring models. They are the curriculum-based measurement or CBM and mastery measurement. In CBM, all skills are assessed by each test. Curriculum-based measurement is a method that teachers use to find out how students are progressing in basic academic areas such as math, reading, writing, and spelling. CBM can be helpful to parents because it provides current week-by-week information on the progress their children are making. While in mastery measurement, skills are assessed one at a time in a predetermined instructional sequence. Mastery measurement is a valuable tool for evaluating a student's understanding and proficiency, like a single target skills like drama, dancing, singing, and others.
Okay, so now that we are able to understand what progress monitoring means, we can now move forward to the steps in conducting progress monitoring, which is listed by Looknear and Bowen in 2010. So the first step is to determine the level of implementation, whether an individual, a small or large group, classroom, grade, or school level. So meaning, if we determine the level of implementation, we can be able to give out the right and exact level of knowledge, test, evaluation to the students, as well as avoid giving out easier tests to higher level or giving out harder evaluation to lower levels. Second step is to decide on what measures to undertake. So I know it is very understandable, but deciding on what measures to undertake does not only work in real life experiences, but also in monitoring the progress of our students. So when we decide on what measures to take on, meaning we are able to stick on our objectives, which is to monitor the progress of our students. Okay, so the third step is to collect screening or baseline data. Excuse me. So, the third step is a form of assessment, because when we say baseline data, it refers to the measurement that is collected prior to the intervention or teaching starting. So, for instance, is administering and scoring the test or probe. To ensure the validity, frequent testing should be done. The next step is to decide on short-term objectives or outcomes. So if it is important to decide on what measures to take on, it is just as important as well to decide on the short-term objectives and outcomes. So next is to set and articulate long-range goals. So if it is important to decide on short-term goals and outcomes, it is also just as important to set and articulate long-range goals. Next is to graph the scores, which is very understandable, so I don't have to dig deeper on that. And then next is to make instructional decisions, adjust pedagogical strategies when needed. So we all know that students are all different. They learn in various and different ways. So making instructional decision and being able to adjust pedagogical strategies when we need to is important. Okay, so next is to continue monitoring. This is very important, no, because we are monitoring the progress of the students. So continuing monitoring and being consistent is important. Next is, which is actually the last step, the 10th step, is to report on the progress to the student, parents, guardians, and stakeholders. So this is just as important as well, because reporting to the students, parents, guardians, and stakeholders means that they are aware of the progress that the students made. So, progress monitoring is said to be a valid and reliable prediction of subsequent assessment performances, which is according to Deno in 2003. Now, let us move forward to the Philippine Basic Education Rating System. Okay, so for this table, we have the new percentage distribution of grade components. So, as you can see, we have four rows, In the first row, we have the learning areas, tracks. Second is the written work. Third is the performance task. And then lastly, we have the quarterly assessment. So in the second column, we have the grades 1 to 10 and learning areas such as languages, Araling Panlipunan, and ESP. So in these learning areas, there is 30% of percentage distribution under written work. In performance task is 50%. In the quarterly assessment is 20%. So as you can see, attention to the table, and that way you can be able to understand. So as you can see, there is pattern. Another example is in learning areas such as science and math, 40% is under written work. Another 40% is performance task as well. In quarterly assessment is 20%. So, using this table, we can be able to understand it easier and the better way. Okay, so for this table, we have the new percentage distribution of grade components. So, as you can see, we have four rows, In the first row, we have the learning areas, tracks. Second is the written work. Third is the performance task. And then lastly, we have the quarterly assessment. So in the second column, we have the grades 1 to 10 and learning areas such as languages, Araling Panlipunan, and ESP. So in these learning areas, there is 30% of percentage distribution under written work. In performance task is 50%. In the quarterly assessment is 20%. So as you can see, attention to the table, and that way you can be able to understand. So as you can see, there is pattern. Another example is in learning areas such as science and math, 40% is under written work. Another 40% is performance task as well. In quarterly assessment is 20%. So, using this table, we can be able to understand it easier and the better way. Okay, so for this table, we have the level of proficiency and descriptors. So when we say proficiency, it basically refers to the skillfulness. So levels of skillfulness. So we have 4 rows, which are the grading scale, levels of proficiency, the descriptors, and remarks. So in the first column, in the first row, we have the grading scale, which I know some of us or maybe all of us are familiar with, the 75 to 79, we have the below 75, 80 to 84, and so on. So I hope you pay attention to the table, in that way you can be able to understand. Next row is the levels of proficiency. If the students scores 90 and above, the level of proficiency would be advanced, or letter A. If 85 to 89, it would be proficient, or letter P. If 80 to 84, it would be approaching proficiency, or AP. If 75 to 79, it would be developing, or letter D. If the student gets below 75, it means the level of proficiency would be beginning, or letter B. In the third row, we have the descriptors. So, if the student's level of proficiency is advanced, it would be outstanding. If proficient, very satisfactory. If approaching proficient, proficiency would be satisfactory. If developing, fairly satisfactory. If beginning, did not meet expectation. For the last row is the remarks. So if the students get the descriptors outstanding, very satisfactory, satisfactory, fairly satisfactory, the remarks would be passed. If the student did not meet expectations, it would be failed. I guess that would be the end for today's discussion. And we hope that you have listened well. And also, we hope that you have learned something from today's discussion. And we thank you for listening. And that would be all.